we'll get the meeting launched. Welcome, everyone. Glad you can join us on this gray, rainy day here in January, but a good day to be sitting inside attending an event virtually. Thank you for joining us, and we welcome you to the event. I'm going to turn this over quickly to John Weidenhammer for brief comments, and then we'll come back and launch the meeting. John?
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Oh, you're muted.
Okay, I'm unmuted. All right. Good morning, everybody. Soon to be afternoon. Nice to see you all. I just want to thank Dave for his time in setting up this presentation and continuing on with our series of community conversations. I also want to thank our presenters for taking the time to put the content together. This topic is one that is, I think, represents a giant opportunity for both business and for the community. Some of you know that I'm on the board of directors of the Berks Latino Workforce Development Corp, and some of our partners in trying to provide ESL training to the community are going to be presenting today. But there's a real significant opportunity in ESL development in our community, both for Spanish speakers and speakers of other languages to learn English, but also a big opportunity kind of the other way of us folks that don't speak Spanish to learn how to speak Spanish. So again, I just want to thank the presenters. You all know about the Berks Alliance, and we're just thrilled to continue to present these forums on a monthly basis. So thanks very much. Dave, back to you. Dave, we need to get you off of mute now.
I'm sorry, my wife just came back in with the dog. We'll cover some quick ground rules here. We ask you to mute your microphones while we're going through the presentation, but to keep your cameras on so we can see that we're dealing with really live people. We ask you to use the chat function at the bottom of the site to submit your questions and comments. We'll get to those at the end of the presentations. If we don't get through all of them, we will collect them and share them with our presenters and get their responses back to you. We will be recording this program. We'll make it available to everyone who registered for the program. So you will get a copy of it to review again at your leisure. And unfortunately, there's some people who are interested in the topic but aren't able to join us, but we'll make sure they get a copy of it as well. So with that, I think we're ready to go. I will introduce our panel and we will get started. First off is Dan Fogarty. Dan is the director of the Workforce Development Committee of Berks County and the COO of the Berks County Workforce Development Board. Prior to assuming this role, Dan served in HR management positions in private industry for 25 years. So he has a lot of experience in this sort of things that we're talking about. His expertise has been recognized in part because he's been appointed to a number of statewide boards and commissions that deal with these types of topics. Ryan Breisch is the executive director of the Literacy Council of Reading Berks. He began his involvement with the council as a volunteer tutor 30 years ago, got conscripted into doing more than that, Brian. And he now is the third executive director in the history of the Literacy Council. His college degree is from Kutztown, and it's in Spanish, which is appropriate for our topic today. Everyone knows Anna Weitz. Anna served as president of RAC for 11 years, capping a distinguished career in higher education. She serves on the board of the Literacy Council and the Foundation for the Reading Public Museum, and is the manager of several important projects for the Why I'm Missing Foundation. And our fourth presenter is Brenda Rosado. She is the Diversity and Inclusion Manager for East Penn Manufacturing, where she's responsible for initiatives that promote diversity, affirmative action, and equal opportunity. She is also active in the community, including serving as the chair of Mujer Committee, the Latino Women to Women group. Brenda says that it is her passion to pursue East Penn's core belief that people will always be the heart of the company. So with that, Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you and we're ready to go.
Thanks, Dave and John. Thanks, team. And thanks for everybody for making time in your busy schedules to join us today. Ryan Bryce, in addition to his many skills, has volunteered to be our slide turner. So Ryan just moved us forward to today's topics. Just wanted to kind of give everybody an overview of where we're going. I'll start out. I'll turn it over to my co-chair on this project, Dr. Anna Weitz. Then she'll turn it over to Ryan and to Brenda for the case study, the best practice that we want to make sure that the bulk of the presentation is actually spent on that. And then I'll come back at the very end, along with Ryan, particularly for the employers on the group, on how to get started and some resources to help. So Ryan, why don't you flip to the next page? Dave, thank you for handling the introductions for us, but just so everybody here knows and can tie the names to the titles, here is who is on the presentation team today. Okay, with that, Ryan, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so today's discussion is about a problem and an opportunity. And this is a really high priority problem and opportunity to be addressed by the Berks County Workforce Development Board in conjunction with local employers and with our community partners who you'll be hearing from later on. But, you know, it occurs to me, Dave, that, you know, last week I was visiting a board member and she asked me, so what keeps you up at night, Dan, in the work world? And my response to her was the same response I've been giving really since late 2018, because it's the same response that keeps most of our local employers up. Again, this is not just a result of the pandemic. This preceded the pandemic by at least 18 months. Simply put, there's not enough workers in Berks County with the skills that we need. That's the problem. And that problem occurs across sectors. We tend to engage with employers on a sector basis, but we just had a market intelligence upbriefing from the CareerLink Business Services team yesterday, and confirmed that across almost all sectors, employers and businesses in Berks County right now are losing business and revenues because they're not properly staffed. And the longer that goes on, the more that impacts everyone in the community. So that's the problem. And it's reflected here in the first two bullets, that despite increasing wages and all kinds of enhanced recruitment efforts, local employers still have more open positions than candidates. Don't know if a recession's coming, but we've never gone into a recession before in my history that we had this imbalance in the labor market. Secondly, and related to that, and many of you have heard board presentations on this challenge before, the new hire churn and employee retention challenges remain consistently and markedly higher here in Berks County than in most other areas in Pennsylvania. We continue to be in the top 3 in workforce development areas and new hire churn. So you've probably heard, and a lot of employers have said, we can't find people, we can't recruit people. The data show, and they will tell you when you talk to them a little bit further, they actually have been able to hire a lot of people over the last 2 or 3 years. They're just not sticking. And that causes a lot of challenges to any business. So that's the problem. But as John Weidenhammer so aptly pointed out at the beginning of the presentation, we also have a huge opportunity, and we have an opportunity that not many other metro areas in the Commonwealth have. We do have a large available pool, I'm sorry, of workers that are emerging here in Berks County. You know, it's easier for us sometimes because we don't have to fill the open positions to focus on the opportunity. And we at the board are convinced that we in Berks County have a huge opportunity in the upcoming 4 years. In fact, we're starting out from a good position because Berks County may have the shortest distance between poverty and the middle class of any community in the United States. It's maybe short, but it doesn't mean it's easy. And many of the folks that are trying to navigate this pathway from poverty to the middle class face a lot of barriers. One of the largest barriers by far is they often come to Berks County with limited English language skills. So the next two bullets kind of outline the opportunity where we find that limited low English language proficiency is a significant barrier to hiring from a large pool of adults who are willing to work. But many of them, most of them are working, but they're stuck in low levels of underemployment. And low English language proficiency among entry-level workers often limits their ability to, even if they can get the job, it limits their ability to upskill into the better paying jobs, which remain unfilled, again, hindering business recovery and long-term growth. Ryan, next. Okay, there we go. So again, this is not something that just emerged in the last 6 months. This has been a growing issue. So last year, the board launched a project to address these issues to try to bridge this gap. And the first step so this was launched in September 21 when the board approved the formation of an ad hoc task force to look into the issue. The task force began its work in October of 2021. And then by last winter, so a year ago at this time, we were full in on employer listening sessions via MS Teams, focused on a sector basis. We started with manufacturing. We then moved on to healthcare and social assistance, which was last January. And then in February, we connected with a number of employers in the hard-hit hospitality industry. And I would say that was the toughest group to connect with. But thanks for a lot of help from our partners, including Crystal Sites, we were able to have 2 small focus groups with folks from the hospitality sector. Then we moved on to actually in-person, and frankly, it was nice that the COVID situation had allowed us to move to in-person sessions by March and April. And we had 3 community listening sessions, one at RAC, sponsored by RAC and the Literacy Council, which was held in English. Then we moved on to the Berks Latino Workforce Development Corps, where we had a bilingual meeting in English and Spanish. And finally, our friends at iLead helped us connect with St. Peter's Church. And after a noon mass, we had a session conducted completely in Spanish. And then the final report was all pulled together and presented to the board and accepted last June. Next slide. So how did we do this? You can move to there we go. Well, first of all, we got Dr. Weitz to agree to co-chair this task force with me. And then we recruited some very talented members of the community who you see before you here. So I want to acknowledge them. Aria Bradley at RAC, Ryan Breitsch at the Literacy Council, Ashley Chambers at United Way of Berks County, Marcelino Colon at the Centro Hispano, Darlene Garcia, who has since moved back to New York, but at the time she was the executive director of the Berks Latino Workforce Development Corp and actually part of our writing team that wrote the final report. Bob Harrop from East Penn Manufacturing, Crystal Sites I mentioned before with Pennsylvania Americana region, Hector Torres from iLead Adult Education Center, and Dr. Ann Zayatz, who's the retired Kutztown University provost. So we had great partners in this effort, and I'm happy to now turn it over to our co-chair, Dr. Anna Weitz, to share with you what we learned about adult English language learning with a purpose. Anna?
Thank you, Dan, and good day, everybody. As Dan said, we talk to employers across a number of different sectors. And what we are going to talk about now are key discoveries that really cross through all of those sectors. Obviously, we know that overall job applicants are down. They're especially scarce for certain kinds of positions. That is not going to come as much of a surprise. There does seem to be a new trend that employers talk to us about at great length, which is a process, I guess, that's now called ghosting, which is that people commit to an interview and don't show up. They might even commit to a job and show up for the first day or not show up after that. They're just kind of disappearing. And this seems to be a phenomenon that is really giving HR professionals, as you can imagine, a very, very high degree of stress, especially when you think that you've nailed down someone to come in for an interview or even start a job, and then boom, they somehow disappear. And you don't even have the opportunity to get any feedback as to what's really going on. We also heard from some employers that they believe that potential applicants have perceptions about what's going on in their employment site. Some of them may be real, some of them may just be kind of myths. But clearly, some of them are very specific to particular employment sectors. Examples would be in hospitality. It's not a surprise that you have to work nights and weekends and holidays in hospitality. In manufacturing and healthcare, it is often the case that new hires cannot begin at first shift. They may have to take second or third shift. Some others have perceptions about the safety of different environments. Again, they may be accurate, but they may not be accurate. A lot of it has to do with the sophistication of the potential applicants. But the overriding concern was the lack of English language proficiency really is a pressing issue for candidates and those who are incumbent workers who, as Dan said, we use the phrase upskilling. That means that they can take advantage of opportunities for advancement, which typically have more responsibility and usually provide a higher level of compensation as well. So Ryan, if you change that slide, please. Little technical glitch here while we wait for the next slide. Whoops.
It was good. We got to see everybody.
We did get to see everybody for just a quick second. So there, now we need to go back to the feedback from the from job seekers. There we go, from job seekers. And again, Dan described the different forms we had, and we were truly in a listening mode. We had prompts and questions, but what was very interesting was the passion and the enthusiasm from the people that we met with who were really interested in, they're committed to being here in Berks County and in and around the city of Reading. Most of them are working, and many of them are actually working at multiple jobs in order to be able to support themselves and their families. So the idea that these are folks who are not necessarily looking for employment, certainly with the hundreds of people that we talked with, that was not the case. They are often enrolled, the ones we talked to are either often enrolled in English language classes or would like to be. And I say would like to be because many of them have concerns about their ability to enroll or even complete the classes because they have so many complications in their lives. They have work schedules. I mentioned that they are often working in multiple jobs. They have family obligations, transportation. Where are these programs located? How can I get to them? I should mention that almost all of the programs that are available are offered free of charge because they are underwritten primarily by public funds or occasionally grants from agencies like the United Way or other charitable organizations. So it's not so much a cost as it is the circumstances of being able to enroll and complete. One of the takeaways that all of these people said to us was how great it would be if they could combine being in a workplace with an opportunity to learn English while they are right there. So Ryan, if you'd go to the next slide, please. So when we thought about all of this, we thought, okay, let's not only just identify the problem, let's also talk about what we know some of the employers are already doing to address this. Well, many of them are looking at the kind of requirements they have. And we have no better example than what our new governor has just declared as of yesterday or today, that there's going to be a large number of state jobs that no longer require a bachelor's degree, that the state is going to start recognizing different kinds of credentials, which is a community college and a workforce educator, I think is a great move. And so many of the employers that we talked with, where it is possible to do so, and we have to specify that it is not always appropriate for every job, they are taking a look at their requirements, and sometimes they have the ability to change required to preferred. They're looking, of course, at trying to help their supervisors and particularly their HR people better understand the cultural background and expectations of the workforce. They're looking at better interviewing processes. And let me give you an example that was very touching from one of our sessions. One young person mentioned to us, a young adult, mentioned to us that he had had a wonderful job interview. He felt that everything was going well. His English was not great, but it was sufficient for him to have a conversation with the interviewer, and everything seemed to be great. And the interviewer was very interested in actually offering this candidate a job. But the next step was to fill out all kinds of paperwork. And so the applicant was given the paperwork, was told to go off into a room and fill it out and let the interviewer know when the paperwork was completed. Well, you probably know where I'm going to go with this. The paperwork was using terminology and language that was very difficult for someone who's not super proficient in English to understand. It was complex. It asked for information that didn't seem to be directly pertinent to the job or to the job candidate's abilities and experience. And so what happened? This person essentially just left feeling very frustrated because he really thought that he would be a great candidate for this job. But the process of having to fill out all this paperwork was daunting. Now, we are not necessarily recommending that everything be translated into Spanish. We realize that can be an overwhelming and an expensive process for an employer. But we do recommend, and many employers are doing this, that they're being strategic about this, and they're looking about what kinds of materials they have that could be translated into Spanish that would help them, particularly with new hires. Of course, many employers are looking at and developing bilingual candidates for supervision and training, but we know they're in short supply. But the one big takeaway that we found across employers who are really strategically attempting to deal with this problem is that they're reaching out to community partners to provide on-site English language classes that are aimed at retaining and advancing their employees. Next slide, please. And so our recommended strategies include the following. We really need, as a community, to recognize that increasing the number of individuals who live here in Reading and Berks County who are proficient in English is a positive, not only for those individuals, but for our community as a whole. Their health and well-being will be improved when they are able to get, retain, and advance in family-sustaining jobs. We think one of the ways to do this is to increase the number of English language skills training programs that are available. And obviously we're talking today about one of the best practices is to do that with employers and partner agencies working together. All of this needs to be customized. It is not a one-size approach fits every employer or every employment sector. But I can assure you, as we go forward, you're going to see that the partners that we're going to recommend to you have the ability to sit down and talk with employers to identify what would work for them as a best practice to increase their hiring, retention, and overall employment strategies. So now I'd like to turn this over to my friend, Ryan Bryce, the Executive Director of the Literacy Council.
Right. Thank you, Anna, and good morning, everyone. I apologize for the glitch with my computer froze. Anyway, we should be good now. The Literacy Council, as many of you know, I was looking through the participants here while Dan and Anna were speaking. Many of you are acquaintances of the Literacy Council, your partners, whether you're a funder or a community partner with the Literacy Council. And so I'm not going to bore you with all of the details of what the Literacy Council does, because we're not here to talk about what the Literacy Council does, just simply talk about an example of what has worked and what can work here in our community. But the Literacy Council is celebrating its 55th anniversary this year, and we work with 2 clients, adults and also businesses, to improve English language and workplace and post-secondary education skills. And we do that through 4 positive outcomes. And the 3 positive outcomes that most of you already know are our traditional programs. But our 4th outcome is to achieve success on the job. And we do that through our Workplace Learning Center, which is the portion of the Literacy Council which works with companies. We work with community partners, primarily RAC, Berks County Latino Workforce Development Corporation, iLead, and others, to provide services to our community and to employers specifically. And we do that through customized instruction. And we do a needs assessment by talking with the employer to see what the employer is looking to do with their employees. And then we create a tailor-made program using foundation skills framework from the state of Pennsylvania. Now, one of our most successful programs that we have had the privilege to do over the past several years is work with East Penn Manufacturing. And prior to the pandemic, the Literacy Council was awarded a grant from the Wyomissing Foundation to partially fund ESL workplace programs with employers here in Berks County. And the idea behind those programs were to help the employers do what we mentioned earlier on in the presentation this morning in terms of providing services to help the employees get better jobs, better communicate in their jobs. So our first program with the grant from the Wyomissing Foundation was back in 2019. And that program continues today thanks to East Penn Manufacturing's commitment to their employees, which I'm going to allow Brenda to elaborate on. Brenda is going to give some background information on the program that we are working on with them, as well as talk about what the needs were from East Penn's point of view so that you get the idea of what the company was facing. So Brenda, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ryan, and good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, almost everyone. Thank you so much. So back in 2019, when we started this program, we thought about, we have so many great candidates that internally that we could really go through for our internal leadership program. So that's where the grant came in for the Wyomissing Foundation, and we thought that was great. We, you guys helped us with writing a curriculum for internally for leadership. But most recently, I would say, as everyone has spoken, in the great need of great candidates, shortage of employees, or applicants, we should say, we have seen how East Penn has applicants that come in that are not English proficient, correct? So what we had asked you to do was kind of help us assess where can we meet these applicants. They had all the skills necessary in order to come in, recommended by the recruiter. Either they weren't proficient in speaking it or writing it. So when we asked the Literacy Council to come in and do an assessment for us, pre-assessment for us to kind of help us do the course outline as well, that was a great help. So let me take you through our course assessment. So the course assessment was, we included safety, communication, workplace skills, workplace policy, but also workplace culture. And that was important for us because I think that bringing new hires into the workplace and showing them how we communicate internally and how we share responsibilities internally and how we speak to each other internally was important. So this is a 6-week to 7-week course, twice a week. The applicant is hired full-time. They go through all the pre-employment testing, then hired into the position. And after the 6-week course, they do a post-assessment. So we then test them to see if they have increased in their language proficiency. This is a partnership not just for the HR department. We bring all those departments, health and safety. We bring the supervisor into this training. We bring our learning and development group into the training. We want to close the loop so the employee feels like they are being supported from the moment they walk in the door, and orientation until they have completed, and they get a certificate for completing this course as well, until they've completed everything. And that's ongoing. We still have, we are starting our 3rd class. We just started in January, our 3rd class, and we still have employees from our 1st class coming back. And, you know, hiring applicants that don't meet these criterias, and then you see them succeed 6 weeks, 9 weeks, 3 months, 4 months, and then progressing, even asking about what other positions can I go into. That sense of I've made it is just so satisfying. We just had a gentleman that asked us this in this new class. You know, this is my 3rd time trying to come into this organization because this is the future for my company and I've made it. Thank you for having this program. And that just broke my heart. I'm like, oh my goodness. So let's make sure he succeeds. You know, what can we do to help him? Now, they understand as applicants that they have to meet this criteria as far as the, you know, pre-assessment. And if they don't, what we do is we recommend them back to the Literacy Council. They go through a couple more of the, you know, the classes, ESL classes, and then they come back. We don't leave them hanging. You know, we want them to come back to us and to East Penn to then again be tested again and be hired through the organization. It's just a good sense of, you know, commitment to community. It does empower, you know, the employee to do more. It just empowers them to take ownership of their position, of their job. It's a sense of loyalty to the organization that gave them the opportunity to start this job. I mean, they had 1 or 2 jobs just to earn what they're earning today. They have more time with their families, and they're recommending their friends and families and everybody they can think of. They're like, oh, when's the next class? You know, and now we're still starting out. So, you know, we're taking it slow. Our goal is to have 10 to 14 or 10 to 15 participants in the class. We don't want to overwhelm, you know, everyone, because we want to make sure that everyone gets the same opportunity to go slowly through the process. It does take a lot of commitment and time, not only from our end, but in the manufacturing sector. When you have people training them, you want to make sure that, you know, you have enough people that can train and kind of be patient with them. And it's also been an increase on retention. I mean, everyone that has gone through this, I can say our retention rate is in the 90th percentile for the groups that have come through. Now, we don't have an abundance number, but it's still a good number. So we're going to continue to try in this program. We're grateful that we were able to find a partner that could help us write the curriculum, understand our needs, because that's important, and understand how we can slowly introduce these programs within the organization, because that's important. You need buy-in from every group. in the organization. It's not just hiring, it's making sure that they understand the workplace safety, the orientation pieces of it. They need to understand the rules and regulations, the proper PPE, the awareness of where they're at, and all that comes with hiring a new person in the organization. So, our outline or syllabus goes through, cultural consideration, the communication skills, the workplace skills, and then they do a final wrap up of the post-assessment that allows them to see how they've gained some of their skills. And if they haven't, if they are not progressing, then we would allow them to continue to take classes, ESL classes with the Literacy Council or the school of their choosing. We usually recommend that they go there, and then continue working. That's a commitment they have to make. So that's kind of our little program in a nutshell. So I think we're we're happy to have partnered up with you, and I think it's working out great. We're very happy with it, and the employees are doing a great job. So back to you, Ryan.
Thank you, Brenda, and we're happy to work with you as well. And as you mentioned, Brenda, this has been an ongoing process, even before 2019, but the current iteration started back in 2019 after we received funding from the YA Missing Foundation, and we just started the third cohort last week. And so we're very pleased that we're able to meet East Penn's needs. So I'm going to turn things back over to Dan, and we're going to talk to all of you about how you might be able to get things started.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Brenda, for sharing. Really, the idea is to kind of put it out there in a real practical way. What can employers do? So we're going to do the last slide on our presentation before we get to the Q&A is really aimed at the employers or your friends that are employers. Is okay, so we now know that East Penn is moving ahead, right? And it's real easy for small to medium-sized employers like we often work with to say, well, East Penn can do it. They're big and they got a lot of money. And I will compliment East Penn because they clearly are investing in this. The YA Missing Foundation got the pilot program, but East Penn is committed to paying for this ongoing training and development of new hires and existing employees. And well, why are they doing that? Well, we know East Penn is a good corporate citizen. They're our largest employer. They got there by being one of the best places to work in the Commonwealth year after year after year. But like everybody else, East Penn has really been challenged over the last couple of years to fill positions, and they're not shipping all the batteries that they would like to ship because of these ongoing challenges. So frankly, if you look at the cost of turnover that impacts any company, large or small, that cost of turnover is killing you employers compared to the cost of investing with local partners in developing your existing workforce. So, my thanks to Ryan and Brenda for that overview. And I know we want to get to, I know what they presented is leading to a lot of questions in your mind. But before we lose anybody here, it's important to understand is the Literacy Council is not the only partner that's working in this vineyard. We have on your screen in front of you 5 partners with different emphasis, different programs, and different relationships. All 5 of these partners were involved with this work, are involved in this work, and the first 4 that are community-based were actually part of, you saw them on the first screen when we showed you who was on the council. And the chamber, with our connection through Deb Millman and our planning council, has been at the table every step of the way. So want to just pause for a minute and make sure everybody can see the contacts. You've heard from Ryan. Ryan, you know, these are not competitive partners, they're collaborative partners.
I was going to.
So go ahead, Ryan.
We all work together. We are all working in the same space. We each have our own niche, so to speak. And as such, you know, we can make referrals or work. If we're not, for example, if the Literacy Council would not be the appropriate place to be a partner for a company or an employer, we could make a recommendation to one of the other partners that you see here on the screen. And they likewise, you know, speaking on behalf of them, would do the same.
That's really important to understand, because the size of the challenge is huge. It's going to take all hands on deck. It's going to take very strong partnerships. Dr. White's mentioned resources that help some of the community-based English language programming. That federal funding has been basically flat for many years. The need grows, so we really have to leverage all available resources. So with that, let me just thank Aria Bradley at Reading Area Community College. They have the biggest programming. They're a local what we call a Title II contractor, so they get federal funding and they, you know, contract with Literacy Council and others. Ryan, so Aria's contact information is there. Ryan, you heard from. John Weidenhammer mentioned early on that he's on the board of the Berks Latino Workforce Development Corp. We're just thrilled that with Darlene Garcia's departure, that the board elevated Violet Emery. They're a very capable new executive director. So if you haven't met Violet or haven't seen their emerging facility down on South 6th Street, her contact information is there. Many of you know iLead for many years in the community. So Hector Torres is the point of contact there. And I know Angel Figueroa happens to be on the call here as well. So many of you, if you don't know Hector, you might likely know Angel. And then finally, nobody does more training with local employers than the Chamber. So Mark Dolinsky, who coordinates the training programs for the Greater Reading Chamber Alliance, is also here. So you got great partners, and I think what you'll find, to reemphasize what Ryan said, is if you connect with one and they think someone else is better able to help you, they will facilitate that warm handoff so that you don't get left behind. And then finally, you know, from us here at the board, we couldn't be more excited about the work that's going to take place over the next 4 years. We will stay connected with all of these partners. This initiative is job one for the board's planning committee, which will be meeting again tomorrow to review what we've learned so far and make sure that we can keep all these partners coordinated, and we'll be reaching out to try to bring new resources into the county to support this work. So with that, Dave, my last thing for the employers, don't be left behind, right? You heard from East Penn, but we learned from our listening sessions and over the last 12 months that there's another good dozen employers here, particularly in the manufacturing sector, that are already partnering with these individuals. And we need to get more working in this direction. It's a great investment for employers. So Dave, let me turn it over to you for the Q&A.
Thanks, Dan. There are a bunch of questions, many of them stemming out of my mind, but could you quickly tell us who are some of the other employers that are involved in this project?
I see at least one on the call. I hate to put her on the spot, but it's public because many of you who were at the Manufacturing Summit in October heard from Diana Blandon at Allpac, and I'm hoping Diana's still on the call. She's certainly, for a smaller employer, I would say probably leading the pack in that area. Diana, would you like to share your experience?
Sure, Dan. How are you?
Hey, I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay. I don't have my camera on because I'm really busy here. But just to review, you're correct, Dan. This is going to be the second year that I'm working with the Literacy Council on an ESL program that we have implemented in-house. So we provide English courses to our employees, exempt and non-exempt, because we do have a group of individuals from our sister companies that have transferred here as engineers and some management roles that we've had in the past year. So it has gone successful so far. We've hit a little bump this past couple of months with some of our employees' attendance, but I think it's picking back up, because at least once a week I get an employee in my door asking me when the classes are gonna restart for the additional semester. And it has been a word of mouth, because we have new employees that they're here a week in the job and they come to my office asking me if they can register for the classes. So it is it's going to be our second year into this. So like I said, the small bumps in the road as to how to accommodate employees that, you know, just start and they want to jump in immediately to the classes. And then some attendance, because we did go 24/7. So the classes are a little bit confusing to employees sometimes, because they are on a 2-2-3 schedule. So, you know, it is as you go bumps on the road, but the employees seem as motivated as the first time that they heard about it. And, you know, I even had a manager who transferred from Mexico just in attendance to make sure that he's on the right track, and culturally he adapts to you know, the Spanish speaking population here in Berks County.
Thanks, Diana. So
how big is your company, Diana?
So here in the Reading, PA facility, we are tentatively 127 employees. And the attendance for the ESL classes is up to 14, and I have anywhere from 12 to 13 employees consistently registered for the program.
So about 15% of your employees. That's good. Brenda, can I ask you a couple questions about your program that sort of surfaced? How long is the training program that you have? Is it fit into the workday, and are employees paid to participate in it?
Yes. The program itself, it's 6 weeks long. They go twice a week, and it is part of their workday. So the class itself is 2.5 hours twice a week. So they get paid for being there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It strikes me that there's sort of two critical factors here. One is the interest of the employers in trying to get them interested in using or approaching this as an issue and a problem as a way of solving some of their employment problem. But the other is the capacity of the partner agencies. Ryan, what is the capacity? You know, we suddenly have 400 employers in Berks County deciding they need this program. What can we do?
That would be that's a great problem to have, isn't it? You know, as Dan had mentioned earlier, you know, the five programs that are right here on this particular slide, you know, among the five of us, we would be able to accommodate 400 employers. I know the Literacy Council right now has, I can't speak for the others, but the Literacy Council right now has 3 active programs, and we're looking for more. You know, we have the capacity to handle more, and these programs can be done at all hours of the day. You know, the Alpec group, for example, 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the evening. So it's a split day for the instructor, but that's when it's convenient for the folks who are working, and that's the key. And so I know, speaking on behalf of the Literacy Council, we have the capacity to provide the programming when the employer is looking to do the programming.
Okay, I'm going to cheat and call on.
Dave, just to add to that, Orion has been the one that has been able to accommodate our schedule here. And not only that, for our program particularly, it's an employee-driven program. They do not get paid for this, but they get the advantage of being on site. They don't have to travel, so they come in 1 hour prior to their shift twice a week for this program, and they still participate and have interest.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to call on Violet Emery to talk quickly about what they do. Violet, are you ready to do that?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. I just want to, we are partnered with the Literacy Council and RAC, and so these collaborations are very important to us and to the community. I can speak on our end as we see the need. We have people that walk through our doors every day where language is the barrier to them gaining employment. So we address that barrier here internally, thankful for the partner with Literacy Council, and now also hiring a part-time instructor internally. So we see the need. We look forward to working with employer organizations in the future, and how Berks Latino can fit into that scheme of services. We are excited about that. As Ryan and I can relate really well to Anna's she talked about the situation where that individual was asked to fill out paperwork, and the language, and it kind of caused them to panic in a way. And so what we do here is one of the services that we offer is help the individuals fill out applications. But we can't go with them to the interview. We know that they have to handle that interview in English, and there may be some issues there. So I think the need is great. We see that with motivated individuals that come in and want to gain employment, and English is the barrier. So if we have more employers on board to be offering these types of programs, and they'll have really, really committed staff members who, just because of language, can't, are not employable. So like I said, Berks Latino is here to do what we can do, partnered with our organizations to continue to, to offer the services that the community needs. Again, we have people that walk through our doors every day looking for employment. And then, they have no English level. They're at a low English level. We offer English, ESL here internally. We help them, get to a level where they can fill out applications and do what they can do. But if employers are offering this, it's only going to be a benefit to both the organization and the individual.
Thank you, Violet.
Mm-hmm.
What funding sources are out there, Dan, that could help employers or the providers? Is it just the interchange between the employer and the provider?
Right. So the funding varies, and it's insufficient. I just put the link for people who want all the details. The link to the full report is there, but that's one of the things the board has identified is both the private funding, such as you might get from the Why I'm Missing Foundation. Everybody's familiar with the great use that the United Way of Berks County has made with its Mackenzie Scott funding. Much of this is targeted to this issue. But frankly, there's almost no state funding that goes into adult education. Almost all of the funding that RAC gets is from the feds, and it hasn't gone up to keep with inflation for 15 years. So really, when we looked at this on a sector base, Dave, is my argument would be that most manufacturing employers have funding if they choose to prioritize this. This is much more affordable. It's not necessarily cheap, but it's not going to cost you what mechatronics training is going to cost you, right, Dave? So it's the return. I encourage the employers to look at the return on investment. I would argue that any manufacturing company that's economically viable here in the county can find the funding to meet the right partner and use it to increase their retention and their internal development, because right now the shipments you're missing, the quality problems you're having are killing you long term. And the projections are that you're not going to get a whole surplus of workers anytime soon anywhere in the country. So why not focus on the cost of turnover, cost of retention? And if you shift more resources this way, as you can hear from East Penn's experience, you're going to find it's a really great return on investment. So in the manufacturing sector, we really need employers to pony up, right? Because it's in your own economic interest to do it. When you move into other sectors, Dave, that's a little bit more challenging, right? Health sector, they can't raise their prices the way other sectors can. So in those areas, maybe some of the extra funding we're bringing in, some grant funding we could get from the state can help in that sector. We have a grant in right now for a nursing industry partnership and registered apprenticeship program with our partners at the Chamber and RAC. If that comes through, some of that funding might be able to help out in this area. And boy, when you get into the hospitality sector, they really can't pay for it, right? So I think when we think about this at the board is, if employers can pay for it, they should. In those sectors where the margins don't allow for that, that's where we ought to prioritize some of our private and public funding. And it's all, we need to go find more of it. Did that help? Does that make sense?
Yep. No, that's helpful. And it's a challenge that maybe we need to talk about in some other way. You talked about the benefit, the economic benefit for the employer doing this. Is there evidence of that being happening here in Berks County, where these programs have really helped employers retain employees?
Not yet, right? Other than what one of the reasons we had East Penn present is because they are the farthest along in start. As you can see, they can measure it. They know they got a 90% retention. I will say that I don't want to speak for Diana, but keep in mind, I think she said she has 127 employees now. 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, they were just breaking ground on the facility up there in Muhlenberg Township, right? So Alpac from the beginning under Diana's leadership has focused on this as a priority, which, can you imagine staffing up a new facility? You know, over the last 3 years, they've done it successfully, and this is a big part of their strategy. We do know overall that retention is killing employers. So what are some things you can do to improve retention? This has worked in other areas, and it's starting to work now in Berks County. So I think when we have this session again a year from now, you're going to find some employers that are going to have some real good data to bring to the table.
Okay, good. One question is, are there resources available to help employers who might want to translate their materials into Spanish? Are there resources available to help people who don't speak Spanish but are working with large numbers of the Spanish speakers to learn how to speak Spanish to improve that communication? I know, for instance, the Reading Truck Body has done a lot of work in that particular area. Are you aware of any? Yes.
So let me first, we have a couple other partners who I think are on the call. So you've heard from Ryan already. They've got capacity in that area. You heard from Violet already. I'm wondering if Aria or Hector Angel or Mark could talk about what they can do as partners to help with that translation, you know, planning, needs assessment, et cetera.
Angel or Hector? No, Angel's been sort of in and out.
Yeah, it's. I hate to call on people without telling them, but.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
There's Hector.
Hi, Dave. It's Hector. Hi, hello, everyone. Good morning. Well, good afternoon now. when it comes to translation of documents and things like that, we really don't have any kind of work or anything like that. But we can establish something. You know, everything's doable when it comes to. I mean, when Mr. Ryan gets these programs together, he puts them together. You know, he figures out what the needs are and then puts something together based on the needs. So we could definitely help out with that. Currently, I'm so excited because to echo Miss Violet's words earlier, there's such a huge need for the language acquisition, also the high school diploma acquisition. You know, there's a lot of these folks that are coming in, they don't have any high school diploma or equivalency in a lot of these jobs. Some of these jobs, they require at a minimum a high school diploma to get into the door. So that's a need that we've been working on addressing through our HiSET program. And currently, we're getting ready to start in February. Our next class is in Spanish HiSET, which these folks are going to be able to come in and take their high school diploma in their language in Spanish. And also the English HiSET, it's going to be started in February. English Language Foundations program that we offer. It's not ESL. ESL, it's what Aria does over there at RAC. We do a foundations program more vocational English that's geared to whatever industry it is that we're working with. So if anybody wants a little bit more information, I have some flyers. I could share them with Dan and Dave, and they could get them out to you folks, and we could discuss helping you out. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Hector. Let me see. Go to my questions here. Yeah, Dan, at the very beginning of this, you started to talk about the need for focusing on the experience, the job-related experience of the workers, rather than specific credentials. How does this issue fit into that sort of challenge? Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Dave, happy to. So first, before I do, I did see someone, I believe also Penn State Berks may be.
Yeah, I'll call on Laura in a minute. I'll call on her in a minute.
Okay, super. So on this particular topic, Dave, absolutely, right? I mean, a lot of those degree requirements and standard requirements to sort out candidates worked pretty well for employers when there was a labor surplus, right? So if I'm going to have 50 applicants for every open position or 12 qualified applicants for every open position, those degrees and such were a kind of a good way of sorting and getting it down to a manageable number. But that's not what is happening right now at all levels of jobs, is that employers have to go back and review those requirements and ask why they're in there. Why am I requiring a bachelor's degree? Is it really because you need certain skills, say in math? And then how do you assess for skills rather than rely on diplomas and degrees? So in this particular case, I think Brenda mentioned perfectly. I mean, they get more applications than anybody up there at East Penn. What happens when you have someone who comes to me, but for their ability to be fluent in English can do this job? Then you get into a very individualized assessment of this individual. And boy, if we bring that person on, have them turn English, they might be a high-end industrial maintenance technician taking classes down at the Schmidt Technology Center at RAC 3 years from now. So this is really important. We don't at the board see even getting back to what we call equilibrium, where there's an equivalency between job seekers and openings. Barring an awful recession, we don't see ourselves getting back to that point in the next 4 or 5 years. So employers, what are you going to do in the meantime to meet your needs? Did that help, Dave?
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. We have a question about, are there other languages that are problems and barriers? We know that obviously Hispanic population is very significant. Reading is I don't know that it's the only one anymore, but it had been the only city with a majority Hispanic population. But there's significant other populations, the Haitian population that's coming into the area. Are there programs for them, or is it just not enough volume to get there?
Yes, yes. So English language learning at its traditional can work with people from whatever language they're starting at. So we obviously focus on Spanish because there's a lot more people whose first language is Spanish than can actually be accommodated in existing ELL courses. But ELL courses, such as those that are offered at RAC, are fully capable of handling folks from whatever background. And you identified it's probably French and Haitian, which is second. That's one where maybe employers might want to engage with one of the partners on. And then everything else just fits in the all other category. So obviously, from a workforce development standpoint, we have partners who are particularly skilled at working with a Spanish-speaking population, but particularly RAC and the Literacy Council have decades of experience working with folks from other languages.
And let me just add to that, Dan, you know, the funding that RAC and the Literacy Council receive through the Title II funds, it is federal law that we do our instruction only in English. So our instructors are trained in methods in which they can work with anyone who speaks any language, because we're not allowed, at least teaching classes using the federal and state funds, we're not allowed to teach in any language other than English. So.
We do have somebody who raised their hand, Alexia Persley. I'm going to let her ask her question. I don't know what it is, but we'll let her ask it. Alexia?
Oh, hey there. Sure. I saw Dave Myers actually just reached out to me and I was typing out my comment. But this is just following up on something Dan said about qualifications for positions and how, gone are the days where you have, 50 plus applicants. And so, this is something we've talked about in our manufacturing summits, for example, about, really taking a hard look at the qualifications for the job. And, when you used to put high school diploma, or GED required, thinking through like what really are the skills required for the job, and then finding relevant assessments for that. Here at Arkema, we use what's called Criteria Corp, for pre-hire assessments. But something I wanted to call out was the work keys assessments. I know it's something that CareerLink can offer, work keys. And there's even a portion of it where they can sort of assess your workplace and your job, help you determine the skill level required, and then test candidates for that skill level at CareerLink. And I took a quick look, and it does seem that the work keys assessments are available in both English and Spanish. Now, the question would be, can the local CareerLink accommodate the Spanish test? I would think so, right? I mean, they're the proctors. So it seems to, I'm not the subject matter expert there. Dan, maybe?
Yeah, that's one to put on our follow-up. I'm pretty sure we can, but I'll need to confirm what that capacity is. Oh, Deb, go ahead.
Well, we'll come back.
Dave, did you say that? I think Aria wants to maybe share a couple thoughts.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a sec, Dan.
Okay.
I want to go to Laura Williver and have her talk about what St. Joe's is doing. So Laura, if you're free, or you can tell us who to open up here to talk about what St. Joe's and the challenges in the healthcare sector.
Well, am I able to be heard?
Yes, you are.
Great. I was having some technical difficulties. I really didn't need to have the floor. I just really wanted to recognize, since our partner, a lot of our community partners, including Ryan, are on the call, and just to mention that, of course, the healthcare sector is another important area that you did mention earlier, in terms of finding ways for people to enter the career path and the training path toward healthcare. And for a number of years now, we've offered the Community Health Worker Training Institute, which is a non-clinical training, but allows people to explore the healthcare sector and possibly go on into either particular types of jobs that help them advocate for the needs of the community, or to further training if they want to get into a more clinical role. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks for the opportunity to say hello, and to thank all of our partners that are on the call who make the program so successful.
Laura, how much of a challenge is this for St. Joe's? I mean, you may not be the best person to answer the question, but is there somebody else here? We can let them talk too, but how much of a challenge is this for St. Joe's and the healthcare at Penn State Health?
Well, certainly there's definitely a challenge in terms of the workforce, and there may be a couple of colleagues that are on the call that might want to chime in about that. But the other thing that we find is that, you know, having English language learners who have worked on their English and come through a program like the Community Health Worker Program, it gives them a nice transition and to build on their language skills and then be ready for additional training. We can't hire all the people that we train in the program, but we also do a service to other healthcare entities that are looking for staff. And maybe I have some friends and colleagues who want to chime in about the workforce at St. Joe's.
Laura, we have a reporter who wants to know what is your last name and what's your position at St. Joe's. It's Laura Williver.
Yeah, my email's in the chat, and Michelle, I know Michelle, so we'll chat.
Okay. Can I ask you a question though? How much is the language challenge an issue for you in terms of your patient load?
Well, I'm not a clinician, so again, I don't. There are a couple other people. Yeah, so maybe somebody else wants to talk about that a little bit. Was Monica on the call?
I am on the call.
Sorry, Monica.
Yeah, we have an interpreter.
Scripted, Monica.
Yeah. Eating my lunch, so sorry, I multitask on this call. It's challenging, especially in our downtown population. We have a lot of bilingual staff, and we have language lines interpreter services that we are utilizing all the time.
Okay, Aria, what's your question?
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to kind of mention some of the things that RAC does. You know, we partner with the Literacy Council and others like Violet at the Berks Latino Workforce Development Corporation. And to answer one thing that John mentioned in the beginning, we're talking about ESL in the workplace, bringing for those employees who do not speak English to help them learn English. But at RAC, we also provide, in addition to those services, we can also provide the flip side of that. So we can work with the non-Spanish speaking supervisors, line leaders, or HR department to kind of customize some culture and basic Spanish language training to bring it to their organization, to their work site. So there are some ways, you know, that we can kind of help the organization in diverse ways.
Great. I apologize for the background noise here. That's very helpful because I think there's a lot of questions about how do we help employers who need the help to be able to talk to those employees. Dan, early on you talked about the issue of ghosting. How much does this problem contribute to ghosting?
You know, I actually think it's less of a problem with this particular population. They are highly motivated to work and to work. You know, the ghosting is more from our traditional existing population that has learned over the past 3 or 4 years that the labor market has shifted. Dave, it used to be, as you know, you never quit a job until you got a new one, right?
Have a job, right.
And particularly among younger populations where a lot more of the ghosting occurs, they never had to learn that lesson. So until the labor market shifts, there's never been a lower penalty for quitting your job. Many employers even hesitate to ask why you're no longer at your last job because they got so many positions, Dave, they may not even want to know, right? And that does contribute to more turnover and ghosting. So we have seen some initial slowdown in churn and a little bit less of that behavior. And I'll say either people have gotten worn out, or you know, some of the issues in the economy are causing people to be a little bit more careful about just ghosting or quitting. So there's some initial indicators that that's less of an issue than it was a year ago, but it's still an issue.
What final advice do you have for employers if they're interested or find us as a compelling need to do? Who should they contact? How do they get into the process?
Right. So the contacts that we've purposely kept the contact slide up here so everybody can make sure they don't miss it. You know, so number one is if you have a partnership and a relationship with any of these organizations, please start with them, and they will kind of refer you if you need to go somewhere else. If you, you know, you can also reach out to me here if you're an employer, or through our business services team at the Career Link. They will get you connected up. But the last piece of advice is for employers that are hesitating to do this. And Dave, you asked about some other employers. I know of at least 8 others that are also already moving down this path with these employers, but it's really their competitive advantage. So I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not gonna share those names unless they're on the call and willing to do it, like Diana and Brenda. But what's your alternative? I mean, how much longer are you going to live with the kind of retention issues and costs and operational issues you've had for the last 3 or 4 years? And by the way, overall, the rest of the workforce is getting older. And so this is your opportunity. So start now, because the sooner you get started, the more you'll be able to continuously adjust your programs. And I think we're all going to end up in a much better place 4 years from now, Dave, the more employers that stop hanging back. It's the problem will not solve itself. You have to get involved.
Ari put in something about additional training. I'm going to raise an issue here, and then I'm going to call on John Weidenhammer to sort of close us out. And John and I are involved with a group connected to what's called the Harwood Institute. It's being funded by the Why I'm Missing Foundation and the United Way. And heavily involved with the Hispanic Center that's focusing on what's happening in the city of Reading and the challenges that the community is facing. Particularly focused around the school district, but I think it's extending beyond that. And they've identified 3 issues that they think are the biggest challenges facing the Reading School District and the Reading community. One is early childhood education. One is after school programming, and I think that connects into issues of violence and that kind of stuff. But the third one is this issue of English as a second language. It's a very, very big challenge for everybody in the community, and a challenge for the school district and for the school district to be successful. Have you had any conversations with agencies like the Reading School District about what you're doing and how they might fit into what they're trying to accomplish, and with the Hispanic Center about what they're trying to accomplish with this Harwood project?
Is that for me, Dave?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
Always for you, Dan.
Right, absolutely. So just about everybody that you see on this list is also connected with the Harwood project, particularly English language. What's a little bit distinctive about the focus here on the board is adult learners. Adult learners are best served in the workplace in what Dr. Weitz calls English with a purpose. Right? They don't have the time to sit in classes for years, you know, at a time to try to get up to speed. But if it's going to help them make more money, get a promotion, they're highly motivated. So, you know, I think the Harwood approach is a little more concentrated on the city, and it's a little bit more focused on the general welfare of the city and how English plays into that. I will say, Dave, increasingly Reading is a place where you can not just survive, but I'll call it survive plus without learning English real well. There's more opportunities to do things without learning English. But on the broader scope, Berks County, it's essential that we get adults up to speed in English, because you're very unlikely to truly thrive and support your family unless you do become proficient in English. So that's why the ESO with a purpose tied to the workplace is the focus of the board. Did that help?
So one final point, and I'm going to turn it over to John really quickly, but if people want to learn more about this, probably the single best point of contact, Dan, is back through the Workforce Development Board, taking a look at what you've proposed, and perhaps the Literacy Council.
So absolutely, Literacy Council, RAC, and also the United Way of Berks County. Ashley Chambers is heavily involved in sponsoring this work. But again, the details in the study that I put the link to, and then us here at the board, particularly for employers, is the best place to start. So
great. Thank you. John, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we'll end the program. John Weidenhammer.
Okay, again, I just wanted to thank all the presenters and everybody that asked these very enlightened questions. I think this was really a super program. I also that the Berks Alliance is also a funder of the Harwood study, but that's not why I wanted to get the floor. I just wanted to encourage us as a community to take the long view of language enhancement skills training. I know as an employer, you might say, well, gee, why should I train somebody to only have them leave in a short period of time and go someplace else? And I think that as a community, we're trying to create this rising tide that lifts all the boats. So I think everybody that gets language enhancement skills training, wherever they go in the community, there's going to be a benefit. You know, maybe they'll use English a little bit more in their everyday conversations. You know, maybe they'll be, if not attractive to your workforce, they'll be attractive to somebody else's workforce. But the key here, I think, is that we take the long view, that we realize we're trying to create a rising tide that lifts all the boats, and that these skill enhancement programs that we talked about today really benefit the entire community. And as Dan said, I just want to emphasize this. Gaining these skills is really a short trip for somebody then, and not an easy one, to move from poverty into the middle class. And we just have to keep that in mind. And that, again, you know, as the per capita income of our community increases, again, that buoys up the entire community economically. So there's a lot to be gained from this initiative, and I'm just so proud and grateful to everybody that's on the screen here, but the others that are engaged in this work, because it's truly important to the future success of Reading and Berks County. So that's all I had, Dave.
Thank you, John. And thank you to our panel. Great presentation. It is very inspiring, very informative. We will be making a copy of the video here and sending it to everyone, so you'll get to see this again if you like. I do also, and Dan, I will send out the link as well to everybody when we send the video to the report. I want to remind people that this is not the only event that the Berks Alliance does. We'll be doing some more. We're doing one next Tuesday. That's part of our Spotlight series, where we're going to be focusing on the Tourism Bureau of Pennsylvania's Americana and their strategic plans. So we'll learn more about what they're doing, what they're planning to do going forward. In February, our community forum will be a presentation by the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia on the economic forecast. Hopefully it's good news. We'll see. We can only hope. And in March, we're going to be doing a session with some presenters from the Brookings Institute to talk about their report, The Commonwealth of Innovation, with some strategies for what Pennsylvania and perhaps what Berks County can do to help support entrepreneurs and startup businesses to try to foster that more development of those that part of the economy. So thank you, everybody, and appreciated the engagement. I appreciated the conversation. We will be sharing this with you, and we will get you the entire video. Thanks again, Dan, team. Thanks.
Thank you for the